Hello, everyone. Welcome to this 34th Urban AI conversation. Great pleasure of welcoming you. Please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. We're going to start in a few seconds, but just before we are giving you some space to connect with each other in comments. So feel free to let us know who you are, where you are based, what you are doing, and why actually maybe you're joining specifically this webinar. Feel free also to let us know the platform where you are, if it's on LinkedIn or on YouTube. That's more for us to know if everything is working well. And actually, if you also attended some previous Urban AI conversations, maybe the one we did last week on Alpha Earth Foundation, for example. And we're going to start. So hi, everyone, and welcome to this 34th Urban AI conversation. It's really a great pleasure of welcoming you today for this fascinating episode. My name is Hubert. I'm the founder of Urban AI. A few words maybe about Urban AI. Urban AI is a global organization dedicated to the emerging field of urban artificial intelligence. We federate a community, a growing community of 200 international experts. We also have a think tank doing research experiments to coin and make advance this concept of urban artificial intelligence. And lastly, we have an Urban AI Academy to educate and help urban organizations, practitioners, researchers in their urban AI journey. And we very regularly organize, actually almost weekly, urban AI conversations during which international speakers, researchers, practitioners, urban AI members can present and discuss their latest research. And for this 34th Urban AI conversation, we have the great pleasure of welcoming Jonathan Metzger, who is professor in urban and regional studies at the KTH Royal Institute of Technology. Hi, Jonathan.
Hi, Hubert. Thank you for inviting me. It's an honor.
It's definitely a pleasure and an honor of having you today. And we will learn more about one of your recent research at the intersection of LLMs, the future of urban planning and attention economics. And we also have the great pleasure of welcoming Yu Zheng, postdoctoral fellow at MIT. Hi, Yu.
Hi, thanks for inviting me to this wonderful webinar. I'm really happy to be here.
Great pleasure of having you, and also to discuss one of your latest research, actually also on LLM and how they are impacting urban planning. So we will first have a 20 minutes presentation by Jonathan on his latest research, and then we will have a fireside chat during the rest of the session, during 40 minutes, the three of us, Jonathan, you, and myself, and actually with you. So if you have questions, comments, or any reactions, please feel free to share in the comments, and we will definitely react on them during this live. Jonathan, the floor is now all yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Hubert. So I have a background. I'm a professor of urban and regional studies, and most of my research for the past 2 decades has focused on studying planning practice, different kinds of planning, but how it is contextually practiced within different institutional settings. And however, I wasn't trained as a planner. I was trained as an economic historian. And recently I've had an opportunity to bring together these two interests in trying to think about how LLM-based AI can be, how can we think about how it might transform the planning profession? The kind of professional preconditions for practicing planning, and also coming at this from a kind of broadly formulated economical angle. And I want to start with giving you a very brief kind of empirical example, which is Nacka municipality, which is a suburban municipality in inner Stockholm region. and they were the first ever municipality in Sweden to automate part of the planning decision process. It was a very, you could feel, innocuous type of planning permits that they automated with an AI, or what they call a robot. You can discuss the proper definition of this particular application. But those who wanted to install a fireplace in their home, this used to take a few months. You would, write up applications and draw up floor plans, and you would send it in, and someone would review it, and then a decision would be made. And now you could get a response within a number of seconds after uploading the documents to a specific website. And initially, for the first year, before the decision was announced, it was also reviewed by a human. But after a year, it was they looked at the results, and they could see that the decision from the AI was correct in 100% of the cases. So after that, they skipped the entire human review, and now it's completely automated. And they've also, in the recent year, expanded the range of permits, planning permits, that are automated to different kinds of water installations and so on. And what's interesting is that when interviewed, the group manager who's responsible in the municipality for this type of planning process said that these are simple tasks. Robots are supposed to do robot things, and humans human things. But of course, Lovisa, which is the name of this AI application, frees up time for the more complicated issues that the staff needs to deal with. And I think the interesting thing here is the idea that there's an allocation of time. And I would say that it's not just an allocation of time, but that time is scarce. But I would argue that it's not just time that is scarce. I would argue that it's a specific type of time. It's attention. It's competent time, competent attention. And my own research, when I worked on studying planning practice, shows that planning generally today labors under what we jokingly, me and my colleagues, have called an attention deficit order. That competent attention is a very scarce resource today in planning practice. Often the critical factor in the challenge in making good planning decisions doesn't have to do with a lack of information. Often there is a tsunami of overabundance of potentially important information that you can take into account in the planning decision. What is lacking is competent attention and the time to sort through and make use of this information and knowledge. So I proposed in a recent publication that maybe we call it, artificial intelligence, but maybe that is also a bit unfortunate, because it leads maybe our thoughts in the direction that we are only imagining that what artificial intelligence does is that it provides kind of superior intelligence. But maybe it would be helpful to also think of AI, and I'm going to talk about more specifically language model, LLM-based AI applications. Think of it rather as providing synthetic competent attention. So not this enormous brain in a vat that you can tap into, but rather thinking of it as having an army of maybe, hopefully, skilled assistants that you can put to work on your tasks. But as you know, with assistants, sometimes they're good at their job and sometimes not. So we're going to come back to that part soon. I'm coming at this from the angle of a theory called the attention economics, the economics of attention. And I would recommend anyone who's interested, Kindle, to maybe take a look at my publication and some of the references there if you find this interesting. The basic idea of attention economics is that attention in an information-rich world is a very scarce resource. And it has had a kind of upswing in recent years because of its applicability to the social media economy, where it's pretty obvious that when something seems to be free, what you're paying with is your attention. It's a currency to some regard. But what's interesting is that originally the basic idea of attention economics was formulated by Nobel laureate Herbert Simon as a theory within the field of organization studies, organization theory. And the seminal paper that's often cited is Designing Organizations for an Information-Rich World. And there, Simon states that in an information-rich world, the wealth of information means a dearth of something else, a scarcity of whatever it is that information consumes. What information consumes is rather obvious. It consumes the attention of its recipient. Hence, a wealth of information creates a poverty of attention and a need to allocate that attention efficiently among the overabundance of information sources that might consume it. And that then the great challenge in what we could call a hyper information richer world as we have today, how can we arrange to conserve and effectively allocate scarce attention? And when we talk about this, I mean, you can define attention in very many different ways. This is also an enormous discussion in different fields of science and research. I have a very kind of back of the napkin definition of competent attention, because I think it's very important to put the competent in there, which is competent attention is the assembly of time, relevant competence, and engagement. So if you take out any of these factors, you don't have competent attention. You may have attention but not competence, or competence but not attention. But for it to be competent attention, you need all these things. Then, of course, time, for instance, is variable. How much, depending on the trade-off between time and competence. If you have extremely high competence, you might not need as much time to complete a task, etc. And if you have more engagement, focus, you may need less time. So exactly how those hang together is for future research to specify. But I think just to be kind of signpost that these are, I think, important components of competent attention. So the big question here, I think, is, so a language model-based AI, can it be of help in economizing attention within urban planning? Can it work in the way that the manager in Nacka suggested, that if we can delegate simple tasks, menial routine tasks, to be completed by LLM-based AI or automated, can we save that attention to instead invest in important issues that are not getting proper attention properly? So will it, as we see in this picture, will actually LLM-based AI, compress information and help us focus attention, like in the picture to the right? Or will it, there's also a huge risk, which is a lot of kind of computer application research shows that computers can actually also, and applications can actually multiply information and information stress. I'm not going to say too much for this audience. I don't think I have to say too much about LLMs and what they are. Natural language interface, kind of out-of-the-box applications is what primarily interests me, like ChatGPT is, I guess, the kind of flagship product. And we all know the kind of astronomical rise of usage of these. And also, of course, among urban planners, although very few, I think, planning organizations have really structured their work with this yet, or guidelines. But I know that very many planners are sitting on their personal computers and just trying things out to figure out, what can I use this for in my work also? I think coming at the question of LLM-based AI in urban planning, there are at least three key questions that we really need to ask ourselves if we look at it from the attention economics perspective. One, how competent are LLMs in urban planning? Can we actually ascertain that they are offering not just attention, but competent attention for completing urban planning work? Second, related questions, will they really, whether they're competent or not, will their use of them really economize attention for planning? Will it lead to an ability to focus and human attention to tasks that are currently not getting the attention they perhaps need to get? And what are the potential impacts and implications of this kind of application, broad scale of LLMs in planning work? To say something about the displayed level of competence, I did a small experiment, which I also present a little bit more thoroughly in the paper that this talk is based on, which was published in the journal Planning Theory, but it's open access, so it's available if you look for it. I did a small. I let ChatGPT, was the O1 model at that time, complete a simple urban design task geared at a so-called septed optimization of a park design. So that's crime prevention through environmental design. And I asked it to optimize the design. And then I asked a few experts in urban design and in septed to evaluate the result without telling them that it was actually, the output was produced by the O1 model. And I gave them a 5-grade scale, and the lowest these replies were graded was on the level of a recently graduated but very talented, the expert added, master student, but most of them gravitated towards junior professional level or senior professional level of the proposals for design proposals. So quite competent, it seems, and this is quite in line with also other such experiments done in other fields such as law and engineering that I've come across. But there are, of course, great challenges to the usability of these tools within kind of real life planning work. I mean, we know of bias, etc. There are built in. There are also fundamental issues about reliability, the proneness of models. That, I mean, it's not a constant. There are different levels, and they're working on it, the builders of the models, but the risk for hallucinations. And I think this is well known to many here, but I just think this is a very telling example that I somewhat vainly I asked the O3 model at that time to produce a research profile for me, which it did, and the research profile was quite good. And then it asked, would you like me to also provide a list of some key publications of Jonathan Metzger? And I said, yeah, sure. And this was one of the papers that was on that list. Contested Urban Ecology, Knowledge, Social Order, and Hierarchy in Environmental Sustainability Planning in Stockholm. It even gives DOI, and it's, you know, what issue, what journal, and it gives here a summary of the paper. The interesting thing is that this is a paper that I could have written, certainly on the basis of other research I've done for years. Maybe I even should have written it. The only problem is it wasn't written. It doesn't exist. It's completely fabricated on the basis of the model's general knowledge of my area of expertise. And if you click the DOI link, it will take you to a completely different paper. So this kind of fundamental unreliability of the model that cannot be completely engineered out, as I understand it, is of course a serious issue with using this model for serious knowledge work in urban planning. So to some extent, you could say that, okay, the models seem to offer competent synthetic attention that can really be on a high level, but they're extremely good at making stuff up also, which can be very difficult to detect if you're not a very proficient area expert in the area that the work is being done. So there seems to be an enduring need for human expertise in the loop to really carefully scrutinize any output from the models, because it can be, there's always a risk that it's quite convincing bullshit. And then the question then, you know, considering this, of course, this is not that recently mentioned kind of snag is not an insurmountable obstacle. It's a question of how much effort does it take to do that evaluation. Is it worth it? And another question is, you know, is it worth it in general? Is it more efficient to use an LLM as a tool for kind of somewhat sophisticated planning work? And it's interesting, this is an emerging research field. There was just a paper that came out earlier this summer with some early tests. And this is not peer-reviewed yet, so, you know, you have to really take it with a lot of grains of salt. But they do seem to suggest that there's some need for caution, that maybe the interesting thing with this research, which was in the field of computer programming, was that the users doing programming, when they use the AI LLM-based tool, it felt for them as if they were being more efficient, but actually they were being less efficient. So this is really a kind of caveat, a need for caution, how much it actually effectivizes work. But if we do believe that there is a potential to effectivize a lot of work, a lot of knowledge work, we have to ask, what are the potential labor market impacts? And I mean, some of the greatest economists of today are deeply engaged in this now, particularly Daron Acemoglu, who's at the same place as you, who we'll talk to later. And he's been looking at for a number of years. He's also a Nobel laureate in economics, or winner of the Nobel Prize in economics. He has been looking for many years, studying with colleagues the labor market impacts of AI and warning of different ways of implementing AI in work life, and how that can impact in different ways, that there are different paths that we can choose between here. You could say that the fundamental choice that he shows is that AI can be used to automate work, which will lead to quite destructive, is his analysis, labor market impacts, or it can be used to raise the productivity of humans, which will be, the way he suggests, a much better way to implement these tools. There's a paper that came out last year. Actually, formally, it's I think a commentary, but it's in Science, in the main cyclical there. So it's quite carefully scrutinized editorially by Elondo and colleagues, looking at how can we expect, this is the state of the art, how can we expect that the introduction of LLM-based AI will impact different categories of professions. And what's interesting here, they don't have planners specifically as they don't look specifically at the planning profession, but they do have these clusters of professions. And we can see that architects and engineers, and scientists and researchers, you could say that planners probably gravitate somewhere in between there. They are among the most highly impacted clusters of professions, where it's expected that LLM-based AI will have the most impact in actually automating, or there's a potential with LLM-based AI to automate parts of that work. This study is based on the US, the professions database, the ONET database, and which lists a number of core and auxiliary tasks for each profession. It's quite detailed. I used the O3 model to extract the methodology from the Elondo paper and run it specifically on the urban and regional planners profile to see what results that would give. And this is just a kind of one day, I wouldn't take it too seriously exercise, but interestingly enough, the tentative kind of suggestion would be that about 1/3 of planners' work tasks would be amenable to automation with or dramatical effectivization with LLM-based AI. So that's 1/3 of work time that could be cut, according to this suggestion, by using LLM-based AI. So what are the implications of this? Well, it could be, one implication could be what the manager in NACA suggested, that each currently employed planner could soon have around 1/3 of their working capacity to invest in issues that currently are not receiving the attention that they need and deserve, because there's such a squeeze on competent attention in planning. There's the deficit order, but maybe with the help of LLMs, then that can amend some of that deficit, so that there's frees up attention resources to invest in important issues that are currently not being seen to in planning work. However, on the other side, it could also mean that if that the people responsible for the human resources decide that, oh, This means that 1/3 of the current workforce of planners are not needed, because this work can be done. So we can cut the workforce by 1/3. So 1/3 of currently employed planners would then see themselves without a job and replaced by LLM-based AI. So that's the less kind of rosy prospect. And however, most probably it's of course going to land somewhere in between. But impact, I would bet my money on that it is going to have a very distinct impact on planning practice in the near future, and already now beginning. So, I mean, Mike Batty is the kind of grand doyen of urban AI, and it's still in 2018. I mean, I would say he's a critically reflective enthusiast, but still an enthusiast of AI. He was still in 2018 arguing that there are some hard choices involved in producing any plan for the long-term development of the city. And it's difficult to see this kind of design and decision-making being replaced by AI. Cannot be automated using any available AI technology. And I would put a question mark after that, looking at how the dramatic development of also just out-of-the-box kind of language model-based AI has developed in the most recent years and keeps developing. So I do think that there is a lot of work that will become automated, that will become effectivized in many different ways. And I think this is the time already now for planners to start kind of put themselves in the driving seat to decide how this will be implemented, so you don't get run over, you could say. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, really, Jonathan, for the fascinating presentation. We shared actually the paper in the comments. We will now actually try to put ourselves in the driving chair and to envision how LLM will transform urban planning practice. Just before maybe we let you enter the room and also put your research in perspective with his research, I might have kind of specific question for you, which is related to what you just presented. In your paper, you said, you wrote, there even appears to exist a manifest risk that AI acts as the expert problem solver, while the human is allocated a role more akin to a quality assurance officer or compliance manager, which in a sense we're also looking during this presentation. And this is really a kind of very powerful actually statement. And this is also something we studied in depth with Natalia Kosmina, who published her paper, Your Brain on ChatGPT, and how we are getting in a kind disengaged when we overuse those LLMs. So there's a kind of de-skilling. And in the specific role of urban planners, how do we avoid this? How do we avoid having de-skilled, or let's say less engaged urban planners by using, and who will inevitably or potentially, let's say, use LLM?
Yeah, I think this is a key question, because I think we're already seeing this development, that it's always, we have these visions and ideas about what technology is going to do for us, and then when it emerges, it does something completely different. We thought that AI primarily was going to do the boring work, and we were going to be, as humans, able to focus on the fun, creative stuff. But of course, the LLM, with that, it's completely different, because the LLM is great at spitting out analysis, and also not just analysis, also creative, generative work. It can spit out, there's no end to how much it can produce. It can produce 10 novels in 1 minute. It can produce how many designs you want. The problem is that they're unreliable. That's what it cannot do. You cannot trust it if you are leaning on it to produce statements that are also factually relevant. So that puts the whole idea of what AI does on its head. The computers do. It means that the computer is doing all the creative work, and the human is just coming afterwards to check, can we trust this? Can this actually be used? Is this reliable? And I'm not sure that's what we want. I'm not sure that's what planners want to be their role, to just fact check the creative output coming from LLMs. But I think there is a trend that can be expected in that direction.
Well, that's actually making a perfect transition with you, Zheng, research this idea of using LLM also for creativity, because you recently published, actually co-authored a paper on what you call LLM driven urban planning. Could you present us this research, and also maybe more specifically those 3 steps you identified as being transformed by LLM for urban planners?
Yeah, sure. In the recent perspective paper we published on Nature Computational Science, we actually envision a future workflow of urban planning where planners and large language model based AI that collaborate working together to finish an urban plan. And we find that there may be 3 different stages that LLM can assist human planners. So the first one is conceptualization. In this stage, the LLM can, because it has multiple interdisciplinary knowledge during its pre-training stage, so it can help human planners generate some high-level ideas like the overall structure or the urban morphology style. And in the second stage is more specific generation. So here we may use some multimodal or vision language model that can transform the prompts by the planners to some specific visual layouts or design of like a community or even larger city scale design. And in the final stage, we think these LLM can serve as agents to simulate how future citizens move and interact with the city, and to provide some quantifiable metrics or evaluation on the quality of the generated plan. So the 3 stages actually form a interconnected closed loop. Yeah.
That's super interesting, this idea of having kind of well-defined LLM, and you explain it as a different kind of LLM being used for each stage of urban planning. We shared it on Urban AI, LinkedIn, or social media, or obviously you can even much easily directly go to the article. You will also see like those different stages. I might have one specific question you maybe regarding the first stage, conceptualization,
Yeah.
because that's super interesting how you explain the fact that LLM could bring around the table different perspectives and expertise, which in a sense is very close to Jonathan's concept of competent attention here, this idea that it would bring more, let's say, competent attention. Could you maybe explain further how would it work very concretely? Would urban planners would interact with a chatbot very concretely? Like, what does it involve?
Yeah, I think chatbot is a good interface for now, and I believe maybe in 1 year or 2 there may be some even better interface between urban planners and large language models. And in our paper, we actually conducted some preliminary experiments to check whether LLMs are able to generate the high-level ideas of urban planning. We test these LLM to answer multiple choice questions that were conducted in China, where these human planners take this exam to get certificates of urban planners. And we find that these LLM can behave as like top 10% level compared to human experts. So they are really capable of handling the textual data of urban planning, and by interactive chatting with the urban planners, I think they can make suggestions on what directions the city are going to go. Yeah.
I think this is, can I say something?
Sure,
I think
of
this
course.
is super, super interesting research. And I just to give a short example, what I think, I think it sounds promising. Like what I do sometimes nowadays in my writing process academically is that I produce an article draft, and then I ask ChatGPT, one of the advanced models there, to simulate a seminar discussion of my draft with a number of prominent researchers in my field in the room. And knowing the work of these researchers, I can see that the comments could come from them. It's really like having them around me, helping me develop my draft. And I think you could have the same for an urban plan. Sometimes you have a lack of resources. You cannot bring in an urban ecologist, even if that would be important. You cannot maybe afford to bring in a sociologist. And then you could use this synthetic attention to get those perspectives in the development of the plan, for instance, or an anthropologist. And I think that's extremely valuable, but also extremely dangerous, potentially, coming back to the question of, who might get fired because of this and not be able to make a living anymore.
Well, maybe we have the last part actually of this conversation, which is dedicated to the ethical implications, where we will definitely discuss it. And I also see in the chat some fascinating parallels between car and LLM. We will also definitely react to those comments. Maybe just to go back again to kind of LLM applications for urban planners. In your article, Jonathan, you describe, I have to say, a fascinating case study where a municipality is integrating LLM-based chatbots to produce kind of KPI, multidimensional KPI. Could you share more on this project, maybe?
Yeah, I'm just in the process of trying to learn more myself about this. I mean, I only mentioned it in passing because I came across it and found it fascinating. I heard the project manager present this, and I've just had a very tried it out a little bit. But it's actually using socio-economic data for a municipality that's has very many different kinds of areas, very mixed. Some are very affluent and highly educated. Others are more challenged areas locally. And they are using this to be able to integrate this knowledge effectively into the urban planning process. So they have not just constructed an engine whereby you can do different regression analysis, spatially based on these factors and combined with different spatial characteristics. They have also made it operable through a natural language interface, a chatbot. So you don't even need to know exactly how to ask the question to get the right analysis. You can just say, look at these two areas. What are the differences spatially and socioeconomically, and how do access to proximity to bus stops hang together with socioeconomic standing in our municipality? So you can use that and get a proper statistical analysis that's relevant. And the interesting thing is that most planners don't have the capacity or even knowledge to do that kind of statistical analysis. Otherwise, they're specialized in other things. But that means that they can bring that in and not, be blind to those impacts.
That's something you mentioned also in your paper. You call it that evaluation. I think it's the last step of your paradigm, of your framework. Can you maybe tell us more about evaluation and like how urban planners can use it concretely?
Yes, it's a great point. Actually, I think urban researchers have been investigating like agent-based simulation or urban simulation for decades. And I think now we have a powerful tool, this LLM, that can perform very fine-grained simulation of the urban dynamics. So in this evaluation stage, we will just let each agent to behave like just one single citizen in a city and simulate how like thousands or millions of LLM agents, they move in the city, they interact with each other. And by tracking the trajectory of different LLM agents, we can get some a feeling of the whether this urban plan is good or bad. For example, we can calculate the travel distance of all the agents to see whether it complies with like the 15-minute city concept. So it provides a very flexible tool to evaluate the urban plans. Yeah.
Can I tag on to what you said? I think this is really important. What you said, the point that many of these simulation tools have been around for a long time. These kind of expert systems, expert applications. The interesting thing is that research time and again show that these again and again, these really advanced technological applications for planning were developed, and then they weren't used in practice because the planners found them too difficult or time consuming. And the interesting thing about these LLM based, or even if you have, it doesn't have to be an LLM based model, it can just be an LLM based interface, a natural language interface that makes them available. I think that is the really revolutionary thing. They are so much more easily accessible and available to actually be integrated in practice than the old, more difficult to use interfaces.
Yeah, I can't agree more. I think almost like 2 years ago, we published another article in Nature Computational Science. But at that time, we were using reinforcement learning and graph neural networks to do specific design to decide the locations of road networks or different land use utilities. But at that time, I feel like the availability or accessibility is way less than the current LLM interface.
On this topic, how accessible is it actually? Like, let's say I'm an urban planner and I really want to make a simulation, LLM-based simulation. Could you maybe describe the workflow for urban planners, looking at us and who would like to do it after this webinar? Maybe you or...
Yeah, sure. I think the one best point of this LLM-driven workflow is the interface it uses is just natural language, where everyone can use, every human planner can use. So previously, other AI models, these deep neural networks, you need to do some very complicated like data pre-processing to make these problem like computationally solvable, to transform it into language that AI model can understand. But now you can just feed just the original textual data or any guidelines or instructions from other stakeholders and feed it to LM. It can just understand the meaning. Yeah.
When you say LLM, you mean basically ChatGPT, DeepSeek, or do you have other models in mind?
These general purpose LLMs can serve as a helpful assistant, and we can do some supervised fine tuning to inject some domain knowledge, especially urban related knowledge, into these LLMs. Yeah.
So that's something you both highlight actually in your paper, the importance of fine-tuning the LLM to avoid some hallucination or even to be more accurate. And this make a transition toward, let's say, the limitations and perspectives on the future of LLM for urban planners. This is really something you both highlighted very importantly. You in your paper, when you explain the fact that we might have some biases because we have overrepresentation of big cities in data sets. And also you, Jonathan, when you say the introduction of AI accentuates the need for planners to explore and develop critical capacities to question how the selection and curation of LLM training data affects output and how the models may be biased in various ways, and how certain values or assumptions may be hardwired into decision-making algorithms built on top of LLM models. So very concretely, question to both of you, how do we avoid those biases?
We can't avoid them. I think that's the important thing to realize, that there will always, just like with humans, an LLM always has unconscious biases because of how they were trained, just like humans have because of how we are trained. We have different biases. So do not think of it as kind of the objective answer somehow that you're getting from an LLM, but you have to be as critical to that as you are to any person you're talking to, any expert, any human expert. You should always, of course, be critically conscious that there might be biases here. So I think that's super important. The thing that when the models grow increasingly complex, the biases can become more subtle and deeper ingrained. And also when it comes to technical simulations, I think these are really important because there are always assumptions in a simulation, in a model. Any model has assumptions built in. Any model has mechanics built in, and they are always reductive to some extent. That's the whole purpose of the model. And I think the danger is if it seems too smooth, you just ask a question and you just get a flow, showing that this is how people will move. Already now, planners have to be a lot of time very generalist, and they're not so specialized in understanding what assumptions are built into the model. And I think the risk with these tools is that it becomes even more kind of seductive and seems more natural and self-given, that you become even less conscious of that there are these limitations, in that there are assumptions and limitations built into the models.
We have a reaction. I'm just highlighting it, actually, a comment from, I hope I will pronounce your names, Saibom Song. And actually, it's deeply resonating with what you're sharing, Jonathan. Like, she's talking about the political dimension of data, saying the potential dangers associated with urban simulations that are developed exclusively on the basis of data collected by specific actors should be highlighted. So data is not collected and collated in a neutral manner, and we need to ask how we can collect certain significant qualitative data into the simulation.
Yeah, and I think the problem is even growing with the training of models on the generation of synthetic data. I mean, the risks compound and multiply and cascade of bias, for instance.
That's a topic we will discuss actually in 2 weeks with Stefan Verus, like how, in a sense, do we navigate with those synthetic and LLM-based data. Jonathan, in your paper, and you also said it, like, in a sense, those LLM, they could help better allocate attentional resources, and you say they could help, like, focus on the political dimension of urban planning function. Can you explain what you mean by this?
Well, it's interesting because I think planning is always planning practice, there are different roles in planning practice. There are different niches for planners, but it's always laboring in a force field between a kind of technical and political pole. And different planning contexts and different planning roles are more geared toward the political side or some technical side. And that's a balancing. But I think with LLMs and the kind of also the kind of synthetic attention that they can provide is mostly on the technical side, which means that possibly they're not as good as at helping out on the political side, which requires a lot of situational judgment and contextual knowledge often to be able to navigate, in a meeting, when to say what to whom, etc., to be able to get approval for a plan or to discuss, critical aspects politically. Of course, you can use an LLM as a kind of discussion partner to figure out political strategies or discuss different options for action. But in that political moment, that's often very situated in time and space, in a room with a bunch of people, the LLM is not that much of a help. So just considering then that the tasks that will be able to delegate to LLMs are more of the technical nature, that means that the humans that are still left to do the work will probably have to focus more on the political side, where the LLM can't really do that work.
I would definitely be interested in having also your perspective on what Jonathan just said, because in your paper, in a sense, you really focus on, let's say, the technicality of LLM. So do you also envision it as a way of liberating time for, let's say, more political dimensions, or is it maybe something else you have in mind?
Well, I think these LLM or other even more advanced models to come in next few years will not replace human planners, but they are just serve as more and more powerful assistants and let human planners to focus on these really like creative, interactive, and collaborative things. And the LLM will just take care what the human planners don't need to do. Yeah, and I'm really optimistic about the technological advancement because like 2 years ago when LLM just came up, it is just a toy, but now it can accomplish much more complicated tasks. So, for example, Jonathan just mentioned the hallucination, the bias, these issues, and I cannot imagine in a year the LM cannot fix these problems. Yeah.
And of course, we're already seeing. I mean, the way I understand, you're the computer scientist, but the way I understand that, like, kind of the fundamental risk of hallucination can never be 100% removed, but it can be removed to, you know, the 20th decimal of percent per prompt reply. But of course, it also has to do with the training data and being more restrictive and curated with the training data. I think we're seeing that. I think a particular Achilles heel for the general purpose models like ChatGPT has been academic references, where that's one field where they really make up stuff. But there you have now other applications that are trained on a much more narrow data set, like the Scopus database or something like that, that are much more reliable.
Yeah, absolutely. And once LLMs are connected with external tools like Google Search or Google Scholars, then it can just generate the right references. Yeah.
Maybe a question to look forward, and still also on this political dimension of LLM. Like, I have in mind this really wonderful project, actually, by one of your fellow, Ariel Neumann, and other researchers at the MIT Media Lab. The project is called Cityscope. I really encourage you to have a look. But it's basically kind of simulations that are embodied, you know, like really like in a kind of Lego city. And so, do you think it should be the future of LLM? Like, instead of having, you know, kind of what face-to-face or face-to-computer interaction with LLM, to embody or to embed those agents, to embed those technology into room, and like using them during, I don't know, deliberations, which maybe could also avoid some biases, you know, like automation biases or others. Like, should we try to have a more collective use of LLM instead of this kind of face to human to singular human to machine we currently have?
Yeah, I think this embodied intelligence thing is the future. And currently, these LLMs are just interacting using language. They are like hide in a place that only language or textual data is available. But the cities are more than just these urban planning texts. We have the real environment, and one day, like, I think these large language model can be combined with more robotic like scenarios like drones or robots that can interact in the real city or in a simulated environment generated by a vision language model. Then we can have more tangible feedback on what the plan is about. Yeah.
We got a reaction in the chat, and I really wanted to share it with you because before we end this conversation, it's Daniel Onren Lator who say, just because car becomes more powerful and faster, more efficient, doesn't mean the externalities and justifications to do car-centered better were ethical, responsible, or wisest. Same with a wiser understanding of LLM.
Yeah. I agree that, you know, we shouldn't, and I think I mean, we can take very many different positions on new technologies. I mean, and one would be to say that, you know, we shouldn't use this, period. I'm not sure that's going to be a very productive. I think it's already too late for that, to be honest, unless there's a global revolution. The question is how to use it wisely. Just like with cars, like we're not allowed to drive them everywhere. We're not allowed to drive them as fast as we like. We're not allowed to sit on the roof and drive them. There are restrictions to what is considered a societally gainful way of employing cars. And I think it's the same thing with LLMs. And I think it's very crucial that we develop these. We start working out now what these guardrail. I don't like calling guardrails, but how we should work with it.
maybe a final question. What would be your recommendations for urban planners willing to engage with LLM, with urban planners looking right now or maybe later at this webinar and who want now to utilize this technology? What would you advise them to do as a first step?
Well, I think the most important point might be just to embrace the change and try at most to use as most of the LLM or AI models as more as possible. I think from the beginning, or it might not accelerate your urban planning process, but once you get used to it, and plus the advancement of the technology, you will become more and more productive. Yeah.
Yeah, I think to experiment, to try out, and to learn what are the and what can this be used for and what not can it be used for currently, but also to educate yourself about what are these things, like trying to understand what they technologically, of course. This is opening kind of going down a rabbit hole, because even in computer science, it's not perfectly clear how they think, these models, if we call it think, but as much as possible to just get a basic understanding, because this is just like with cars. You need to know how to change a tire, and what the signals are in the dashboard and so on. And I think it's the same thing with these. You need to orient yourself, because this is going to have an impact whether you like it or not. And if you're going to be critical, you have to know what you're critical of.
So strategically testing those technology and having a kind of understanding on what they can do.
Yeah.
Well, really, thanks a lot, Jonathan, you for the fascinating conversation. I have to say it was really a huge pleasure to be able to put in perspective your two fascinating research. I really recommend like urban planners or even people interested more broadly on LLM to have a look on your papers, because they are two powerful way of navigating the LLM revolution. You, with the framework very clear, you propose like there's 3 steps framework where you also give practical recommendations, and Jonathan with this enlightening concept of competent attention. So thanks again for joining this fascinating urban AI conversation. Thanks to all of you for your engagement. That's already the end of this episode. We will see you again very soon. Actually, it will be next Wednesday on September 24th at 4 p.m. CET or 10 a.m. if you are Eastern time. And we will be actually discussing technomoral cities. So this is actually, in a sense, something we already discussed. We'll have insights from the city of Eindhoven to see how they embodied morality into their urban AI. Thanks, everyone, and take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.